I love talking about Marvel movies and talking about geeky stuff on this channel. The problem is it's generally the least viewed things that I ever post. So if you chose to click on this video, let me say thank you. But I'm also going to ask you to do me a favor. Make sure you watch the video all the way to the end. Feed the algorithm bot by dropping a like on it and leaving a comment and discussing this topic with me, because I think it's interesting and I'd like to do more stuff like this, and you doing that can help it reach other people who might be interested. I want to start off by giving a bit of a review of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And let me just go ahead and say that I really like this movie. Is it as good as Endgame? Is it as good as Infinity War? Is it even as good as Civil War? I don't know. I don't think so. A lot of people are not going to feel that it was. But for me, it's probably going to be one of my favorite Marvel movies. One of the ones I'm going to come back to and watch over and over again once it's on Disney+. A large part of that is because I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan. I love The Evil Dead. I love Army of Darkness. I love the original Spider-Man movies. And this movie is quintessentially very Sam Raimi-ish. I mean, the last part, everybody complains about how it's edited and the way it looks and how it's all jumbled up. That's Sam Raimi style. That's what I liked about it. I like being able to go back and watch his movies and see these weird effects and cheesy graphics and cheesy cuts and everything else that Sam Raimi is famous for doing in his movies, his low-budget horror movies specifically. So I'm glad that they gave his low-budget horror aesthetics to a Marvel film, and Doctor Strange is the perfect vehicle for that. Sam Raimi really put the strange in Doctor Strange, and I'm grateful for that. But there's another really big aspect of this movie that I like, and that is flawed characters. And Doctor Strange is both mentally and physically one of the most flawed characters in the Avengers, in the entire MCU. He's interesting, he's weird, he's broken, he has such insane moral quandaries, and has to make decisions that sometimes seem immoral for the greater good. He's an interesting character, especially the way he's written in the MCU. In the What If series, but also in this movie, we see how Doctor Strange is always one decision away from making such bad decisions that it becomes purely evil, but then also destroying entire universes because he has that kind of power. He is a fascinating character, and I always want to watch him make the tough decisions because it's cool to do that. Thor has to lead his people, right? And the Hulk has to determine whether or not he's going to Hulk out. And Black Widow and Clint Barton have to decide, am I just going to keep randomly murdering people, or am I going to try to make up for it? And Tony Stark has to decide, am I going to stop making weapons of mass destruction or not? But every decision Strange makes holds the universe in balance. That's interesting. One of the biggest complaints I saw about this movie is that it doesn't really fit the Marvel mold as well as the rest of them. And again, that's what I like about it. Since I've been watching comic book movies, my favorites are things like The Watchmen, The Boys, things that completely take what you think a superhero movie is supposed to be, deconstruct that amusement park ride, and turn it into a dark house horror film or something interesting, more interesting than, giant blue lasers. We're on the second decade of Marvel films. They got to spice it up. They got to change it up. And the direction that they're going in, which looks like the Secret Wars storyline, is pretty spicy. That's pretty interesting shit. A lot of people really don't like Wanda Maximoff in this movie, and I want to talk about that for a little bit. But first, let me tell you that originally, growing up, Spider-Man and the Hulk were my two favorite characters. First off, Spider-Man because he didn't know how to shut his stupid mouth and it kept getting him in trouble. And secondly, because I had anger issues and the PTSD, so I related to the Hulk because I was bottling up that rage all the time and sometimes it slipped out. After WandaVision, I think Scarlet Witch is probably one of the most interesting heroes, villains, characters in the MCU. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the hero that turns bad or the villain that turns good. She, just like in the comic books, is wavering back and forth. And in this movie, she's definitely not the good guy. Now, if you're one of the people that has not watched any of the Disney Plus shows, let me say that they explore some really interesting stuff. When they did Hawkeye, they explored deafness. In Moon Knight, they've explored multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, which is what I think it's called now. With WandaVision, they've definitely explored grief and mourning and depression. And PTSD, obviously, they covered with Iron Man, but it's a little bit here as well. And I'm there for it, man. As a person with a fractured brain, I love it. I love it so much. And it really makes me love Wanda. Wanda does some really bad stuff in WandaVision. And as the fallout of that in this movie, she does far worse stuff. I mean, I'm avoiding spoilers for this review, But good lord, she sure ain't the good guy no more. I mean, they introduced her as a villain, and then she turned good for a little while and did some good stuff. But then once she faced trauma and misery and her mental health failed her, she went right back to doing what she was good at doing, which is bad things. She's very good at doing bad things. So good in this movie, it's almost unbelievable how powerful she is. What makes Marvel good? What makes it better than a lot of the other competing franchises is that every hero is flawed. They have their issues. They can be selfish. They go through personal problems, mental health issues, physical health issues. It's fascinating, right? And that's some of the most interesting comic book stuff there is. When you do that with DC characters, chef's kiss. Suicide Squad? Ooh, I'm there for that too. The most interesting thing about Iron Man is Tony Stark. The most interesting thing about Spider-Man is Peter Parker. The most interesting thing about Superman is Clark Kent. Prove me wrong. Scarlet Witch herself is kind of boring. Wanda Maximoff, though, good lord, her backstory, the tragedy she's been through, her place as a Nexus being in the universe. Ooh, that's spicy shit. And I believe that the story they're telling about Wanda Maximoff is as somebody who grew up in a war zone, as someone who was tortured as a child and as a young adult, as a person who was used and manipulated in their adult life. She has a fractured brain, and I can relate to that, and I like it. I like it. Oh, I like it so much, and I know a lot of people hate it. And I think that might be why. Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is hyper-focused. She absolutely only cares about one thing and will do anything to achieve it. She is clearly manic. I think they were saying that she's basically suffering from bipolar disorder, because that's what it looks like to me in the movie. But then again, I'm an idiot, so you can't trust me. Talk to Kevin Feige. In fact, at the end of the movie, when she is forced to face the choices that she has made in both WandaVision and in this film, that looked like the flip side of the coin to me. That looked like the depressive acceptance and, erasing yourself stage that people go through. Yeah. People are quick to forgive Tony Stark. They're quick to forgive Clint Barton. They're quick to forgive Black Widow. They're quick to forgive all of the other murderers on the Avengers team. Not so quick to forgive Wanda. And I think one of the reasons why is because they cannot relate to the mental health struggles they're portraying in the films. As I will always say, though, mental health might be the reason you do something. It might be the reason Wanda decides to do the things that she's doing, but it's never an excuse. You do not have to forgive Wanda. You get to hate her if you want to. I fully understand and accept that decision, because I kind of hate her. She did some pretty awful stuff, and with those cameos, kind of ruined some characters in a way that I did not want to see them get ruined. So it was still cool, though. It was cool. I didn't like it, but it was cool. One of the biggest issues I think this character faces is that people who do not deal with mental health issues have a lot of trouble relating to people that do. And I've been in enough group therapy sessions to know that even people who experience the same issues will not always agree with the other people who experience that same issues because they have different experiences with those issues. I'm a different person than you, so even if we both do have depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, whatever it is, we're going to experience it and feel differently about it, and we're probably going to disagree quite a bit. For a lot of people, the idea that you could be so angry, so hurt, so sad, so in mourning, so in grief that you would choose to do the things that Wanda did just doesn't add up and doesn't make sense for a lot of people. And I understand that. I really do. Because even as someone who's been raised around mentally ill people, even somebody who's severely mentally ill himself, most of what she does is pretty unforgivable. Sad but true. But I can't help but say it's interesting storytelling. So much more interesting than any of the other flawed characters we've had so far. And they've all been flawed and they've all been magnificent. And that's what keeps me coming back. Not the CGI fights, not the giant blue lasers, but the interesting storytelling around flawed and horrible characters. I mean, I wish we went with a version of Hank Pym that beat his wife. I wouldn't like him, but it'd be interesting. And because of these elements, it's why I've liked the Disney shows so much when other people don't. And it's why I like the fact that they've done this with the movie, and I know a lot of people won't like it, but for me, do I believe this is one of the best movies they made? No. That honor probably belongs to Endgame. It probably belongs to Spider-Man No Way Home. But is it one of my favorites? Yeah. Right up there at the top. Great movie, 10 out of 10. Can't wait to see it again. I like feeling represented. And when I see the Hulk go on a rampage or try to bottle his emotions, I feel represented. When I see Tony Stark dealing with PTSD, I feel represented. And when I saw Scarlet Witch dealing with grief, dealing with mourning, dealing with being manic, and all of these other issues, I felt represented. And I like feeling represented, especially in the Marvel Universe. There's not a lot of ways to represent me in the Marvel Cinematic Universe until we bring the Blob onto the scene, I guess. So as usual, this is one man's opinion. I know I could be wrong, and I'm curious as to what you think. Have you seen the movie? Do you plan to see it? Do you agree with my opinions on it? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm always interested in hearing this stuff. Let me know if you want to hear more reviews and me talk about more stuff like this. I sure would like to. As long as you're watching, I'll make it. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I will speak with you again soon.